Derby Wars, racing's biggest contest site, is now even bigger with more than 200 games every day. Check out Survivor, Derby Wars' hottest new game. It's fun, easy to play, and for just $4 you could win $1,000. Just pick a horse to finish first, second, or third and advance to the next race. With daily payouts and games starting every hour, you'll see why fans are racing to play Survivor.
Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsey, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Brian, and you know what? It's a pleasure being here with you also.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It's a pleasure for us to be here with our HorseCenter watchers, our loyal watchers on HorseCenter every week, and we always enjoy doing the show, and we're going to jump right in. We're going to jump right in, Matt, with McCraken, and I'm going to let you go first, undefeated in 4 starts.
I will get cracking with McCraken. Brian, I like what I see from McCraken. I really like that he won the race at Tampa, first time away from Kentucky, and he did everything right. I mean, I know some people are saying that he doesn't dazzle you and he doesn't look brilliant. But you know what, Brian? With only 4 starts in his career, he's doing everything right and has found a way of running, staying close to the pace, making a nice move around the turn, a nice acceleration to get command of the race, and then win the races easily. No, he's not drawing off to win by 7 or 8, but you don't have to do that. He kind of takes care of himself and does a lot of really good things.
Yeah, Matt, I think he's interesting. We see a lot of horses who are precocious and fast, and they start their careers in big fashion, winning a bunch of stakes, being undefeated early on the Derby trail. Often they fizzle as they go longer, as the stakes get higher. McCraken is looking a little bit different than a lot of them in that he doesn't really have much speed, in that he's trained by a trainer in Ian Wilkes, who is not known for getting his horses geared up quickly, geared up ready to run right out of the gate, or even early in the season. So the fact that McCraken looks so professional, the fact that he's coming pretty far well off the pace, I guess he stayed within the Sam F. Davis, I guess he stayed within 7 lengths or 8 lengths or whatever, but he had to make up some serious ground on the turn. He did it quickly, he did it impressively, and he did it professionally. There's hard to knock anything. I know some people said Tappert was running at him at the end, but personally, Matt, I don't think Tappert would have went by McCraken if they had run another mile. McCraken had the race won at the 16th ball, and he was pretty much cruising to the wire at that point. Tappert looks like a horse, a $1.2 million yearling, by the way, who we should watch in the future. But certainly McCraken has, I think, earned the right to be, I just saw Win Las Vegas odds this morning, and McCraken is the 6-1 favorite, the individual favorite for the Kentucky Derby. Where else should he be?
Right, I agree, Brian. He should be number 1, and people are knocking the Tampa win a little bit because they said promising horses like No Dozing didn't run and ran badly in there. I don't think that's a way to knock McCraken. Maybe it's just that he was better than all of those horses. It was a good, solid field, 2 good Pletcher horses that a lot of people liked making their debut, and McCraken was head over heels above this field.
Yeah, if not the best Kentucky Derby prep we've seen so far, I think it was the deepest Kentucky Derby prep, at least of this year. And fact-finding and No Dozing certainly were disappointments in there, Matt, but Tappert ran a very good race. State of Honor was very game, nice improving colt for Mark Casse. Wild Shot menaced big time at the quarter pole and looked a little short late in his return. But I think all 3 of those ran their race. So we haven't even mentioned it was a track record. I will temper that talk a little bit with obviously the times that Tampa were unusually fast Saturday for their big day, their first big day of the year. But it was solid in every way, and McCraken moves on. Looks like the Tampa Bay Derby will be next, and Ian Wilkes has been sure to let us know that he will not be a 2 prep Derby horse. He's going to have a 3rd prep, Tampa Bay Derby being next.
Yeah, and right now, McCraken's my number 1.
Good enough. That means something, folks. Remember, he had American Pharaoh 2 years ago. I almost said you're number 1 at this point last year, but we won't mention that. Matt, the most impressive horse of the weekend for me was not a 3-year-old. It was a 4-year-old, and a Sharp Azteca. Now, he was a tough luck loser of a Malibu late last year, but I thought his performance in the Gulfstream Park Handicap, the Grade 2 race at Gulfstream on Saturday, was really, really impressive. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong, and Sharp Azteca's performance in that race was kind of was very different from what we were talking about with McCraken. Sharp Azteca's race was a fast race, and he drew off to win by a big margin against a very good field at Gulfstream Park against Tommy Macho, who had just in the same kind of one-turn mile was devastating. So Sharp Azteca took that field and left him in his dust.
Most of his wins, oddly enough, I guess we think of him as a one-turn horse, but most of his wins are at a mile. And Jorge Navarro and connections have some high hopes for Sharp Azteca this spring, which include a trip to Dubai for the Rich Godolphin Mile, and then back to Belmont for Belmont Stakes Day and the Met Mile. I don't know that those will be his next 2 races, but those are 2 big ones to point for. I was really impressed with this race, Matt, because we know of him as a real speed horse, speed that can run you off your feet. But he pinballed out of the gate a little bit, and he showed just a little bit of relaxation early, letting the other horse have a head or neck lead before just taking over the race. So Sharp Azteca, if he's not the best miler going, I'm not counting Arrogate as a miler in any way, but if Sharp Azteca is not the best miler going right now, I don't know who is.
Yep, looked like a great race. I'll wait and see if he can put a couple of wins together.
There you go. Let's get back to the 3-year-olds, Matt. I don't know that the next 2 we're going to mention are Kentucky Derby horses. They've only sprinted so far. 2 impressive wins in a row from both Iliad on the West Coast and Malagasy on the East Coast. Let's start with Iliad, Matt, another son of Ghost Sapper, just like McCraken, interestingly enough. And he was one of those Kaleem Shaw horses that was transferred out of the Baffert barn into Doug O'Neill. Didn't do much running in the first start of his life, but his last 2 have been sharp.
Yep, and Iliad, he looked very impressive at Santa Anita. He was competing against a stablemate from Doug O'Neill's barn that was running for Paul Redham, but it was no competition. It was the red, white, and blue silks of Kaleem Shah, which seemed a little strange to be running for Doug O'Neill, but he ran a big, big race coming around the turn, and just as you can watch in the video, folks, and just blew away this field. He's a go zapper, like you said, Brian. He hasn't gone beyond 7 furlongs here, and not sure what O'Neill's plans are with the horse, but he sure looked good going the 7 furlongs.
Yeah, it's interesting, Matt. His big maiden win was at 6 furlongs. The San Vicente, of course, was 7 furlongs here. But son of Ghost Sapper, you think he might stretch out? O'Neill does plan to stretch him out. Next time we should see him at 2 turns, maybe the San Felipe, a mile and 16th. So Iliad becomes a new California horse to watch. And this is the time when we're going to see a lot of these horses popping up as potential real Derby horses. So watch out for Iliad. Also, Malagasy, son of Shackelford, 5.5 furlongs on the slop. He won by a pole in his debut. Came back at 7 furlongs on Sunday and looked pretty much just as good. Todd Pletcher, he's the horse that's been working well with Battalion Runner. How good might this horse be?
That's a good question, Brian. Well, like you said, his maiden win was by 15 on the slop, but on this day it was on a dry track at Gulfstream, and had some challenge in the beginning of the race. A horse running head-to-head with him coming around the turn, but as they straightened out and that horse was asked to run, easy peasy on the lead there, Brian. pulling out by 7 lengths, and registered a very, very, very big Beyer speed figure. I think it was 103, which is a big number. I know they were only going 6 furlongs, but this is another one of those late developing Pletcher horses. I think he's going to give him a shot in a Derby prep race next time. We'll see what we got.
It seems like Pletcher's been a little non-committal with him going around 2 turns. There has been talk that maybe he'll keep him sprinting. It seems like, though, he is ready to give him a shot. So he's wanting to see how he trains. The Rebel has been brought up as a possibility for him next time, which is a mile 16th race, of course, at Oaklawn Park. So, yeah, I think he'll get his shot, but I think in the back of Pletcher's mind also, he might be thinking of him as more of a one-turn horse. Regardless, Matt, it's nice to see a son of Shackelford doing so well.
Yeah, first crop of Shackelford, no doubt.
Popular horse. Popular horse on the West Coast, Matt. I think we need to mention Valdori. She is starting to rack up the wins. Of course, an Argentine mare for Bob Baffert now by way of Dubai. You remember she ran in the Oaks and the Derby over in Dubai last year. She's won 7 of 12 lifetime, but she's won 4 in a row in California, 3 consecutive Grade 2 wins, one to watch for sure. I also want to mention, Matt, one of the best sprinters in the country, Alsvid. I'm sure you've seen Alsvid somewhere, whether it be Kentucky or Iowa or Oaklawn Park. Alsvid won 16 times out of 47 starts. He had a small leg thing recently, and he's been retired. $1.3 million in the bank, Matt.
Terrific career, and it's nice to see those horses go off to retirement while they're still sound.
Exactly. And Gunrunner, Matt. Speaking of nice horses, Gunrunner is returning. It's Holiday Monday. Oaklawn Park has a big card on Monday. The Razorback Handicap and the Southwest Stakes are part of that card. And in the Razorback, we're going to see the return of Gunrunner. Matt, he was one of the best 3-year-olds in the country. There can be no other way to describe his season in 2016. What if Gunrunner is bigger, stronger, more mature as a 4-year-old than he was at 3?
If that's the case, and I sure hope it is, Brian, then we're in for a treat, because people have to remember, like you said, Brian, he was a 3-year-old. He ran in every race. He danced every dance. He had a long and sustained campaign, which is very unusual these days, a little bit different than the number 1 horse, Arrogate. And, I'm looking forward to see what he can do. I really hope he comes out of the gate running and puts a win up there on the board, so people really will recognize the talent that this Steve Asmussen horse has.
Yeah, Matt, it was just an awesome season. He won the Louisiana Derby quite easily early in the season. He ran a very good Kentucky Derby to be 3rd after pressuring the pace. He won 3 graded stakes before getting to the first try against older, or the second try against older horses. He ran 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, which I actually didn't think was his best race of the year. 2nd in the Dirt Mile at the Breeders' Cup, nothing to sneeze at there. But then the Clark, he might have had the advantage of the pace falling his way a little bit, but it was an impressive win. And you look at the horses behind him, Noble Bird, Breaking Lucky, Shaman Ghost, who of course was clearly 2nd best in the Pegasus. None of them had a chance against Gunrunner that evening at Churchill Downs.
Yep, Brian, and for every reason, we can expect Gunrunner over this little bit of a layoff to get bigger and stronger and more mature as a 4-year-old.
Yeah, and word out of the stable, he was of course stranded just a little bit at Fairgrounds this year because of the virus that was there in the quarantine. But all indications, and I've seen a few videos of his works, is that he's working really, really well. His stable is just excited about how well he's doing right now. So we should see a very good Gunrunner, not to mention how consistent. He's never failed to cash a check, Matt, how consistent he was last year. So like we said, I guess we're both excited to see Gunrunner, who I think is in the running, in the conversation this year as possibly the 2nd best horse in the world, behind only Arrogate.
Yep, I agree, Brian.
All right, Matt, let's jump into that Southwest. We're back on the Kentucky Derby Trail, of course. Southwest is interesting. Now, uncontested, I think I like him a little bit more than you do to this point, Matt. He's a Wayne Catalano trainee, and he's got some interesting breeding in that I think there's a lot of distance there. Tis Wonderful on the top, Lily T on the bottom, a Derby winner. He just rolled in the Smarty Jones, which was the first Derby prep at Oaklawn Park. It did come up a wet track, but there was no doubt that he was dominant that day.
Yeah, Brian, uncontested looked great in the Smarty Jones on that wet track. The rider sent him right out to the lead, and he extended the lead all the way around the track. Coming down the stretch, it didn't look like he was fading by any means. The Southwest is going to be run on Monday, along with Gun Runners race. So racing fans, we got a big weekend and some great racing on Monday. For the most part, uncontested is going to be facing a lot of the same horses from the Smarty Jones. So that may not be the biggest challenge, although they might like the dry track better.
Yeah, Matt, I think those horses are still well-liked to a point. Really dominant in the Smarty Jones was uncontested. I liked uncontested's only 2 races as a 2-year-old quite a bit. He won a maiden very nicely. And then in the Kentucky Jockey Club, which was won by McCraken, he was way out on the 12th hole, and he showed a lot of speed to get to the lead early. And then he faded, but not faded badly at all. He finished 4th, but I think it was a much better 4th than you would normally think on paper. So uncontested, I think, is a horse of big potential, and I could see him zooming up Derby lists if he kind of repeats the Smarty Jones on a dry track in the Southwest. Petrov chased him all the way. Rowdy the Warrior has some potential to be a nice rallier. Warriors Club, there's still hope for that one, the Kentucky, the Churchill Downs group horse. But I think there are some interesting new horses in the Southwest, Matt. A lot of people like looking at Lee, and why not? The son of Looking at Lucky consistently rallied last year. He might be a 10-furlong horse. He was second, you remember, to good horses like Not This Time in the Iroquois. Very good field in the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. He was second to Classic Empire. And then at Santa Anita, he rallied to be 4th in a big field in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Looking at Lee will be making his first start of 2017 on Monday in the Southwest. And then Hence is a son of Street Boss for Steve Asmussen, who has been improving with every start. And his last race at Oaklawn was a very, very interesting one where he was kind of inconsistent, to say the least, down the stretch, but he still got the win at Oaklawn. So either of those new shooters for the Southwest interest you, Matt?
Yeah, I think that both of those horses are interesting. Like you said, Brian, I'm not sold on uncontested yet, especially with that wet track win. So it'll be interesting to see if he can handle those newcomers as easily as he did everybody else in the Smarty Jones.
That's right. And as we've both said, Monday is the day at Oaklawn Park, the big holiday Monday at Oaklawn Park. You got Gun Runner and the Razorback. You got a nice field for the Southwest led by Uncontested. Matt and I will be back next week talking Kentucky Derby. We'll be talking Gun Runner and the Razorback and plenty more. Folks, as always, we appreciate you watching. I also want to thank the best contest site out there, Derby Wars, for their sponsorship. Closing shots from you, Matt Schiffman.
I want to thank our crack producer, Brett Workman, for his great work on the show.
Agreed. Folks, we'll see you next week on another edition of HorseCenter. Thanks for watching.